Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome to UNO once again. You know, it seems in all the years that I've covered news that one story that never goes away is that of the folks in our community who for some reason or another find themselves homeless. And it sort of reminds me of the New Testament where Jesus said the poor would always be with us. Well, the homeless will always be with us, and not for the reasons you may think. This week on Consider This, I have three folks who work day in and day out with the homeless population of the metropolitan community. Mike Sacklar is with the Siena Francis House. He's the executive director. Deborah Hayes is with the Open Door Mission, which has men, women, and families in their programs. She is the director of public relations. And also with us today is Rod Bauer. He is in charge of the day program at Siena Francis House. We're often criticized about how we perceive the homeless, or that we don't maybe want them hanging out downtown because they're not good for the new face we're putting on in our downtown. First, what would you say is the right attitude to take towards the homeless? And then we'll get into some specifics about what's going on.
Well, my personal feeling is you really can't criticize the homeless or their lifestyle until you understand what has been going on in their lives. If you don't want them to, say, congregate in certain places, then they need to have alternatives to go to. They need a safe, secure community in which to live in.
Deborah?
We see the homeless as people first, and we want to appeal to them as people first. We want to treat them as people first, and then homeless second. Throughout the United States, the average age of a homeless person has changed to 9 years old, which is shocking in a very sad way that throughout the United States, the average age of a homeless person is 9 years old. When Open Door Mission began in 1954, the common homeless person was the inebriated man, middle-aged, scruffy-looking, dirty. But now we're seeing more and more families, especially children, who are suffering and seeing the effects of homelessness and poverty.
So you want people to broaden their look at the homeless. You work with them on sort of the daytime basis, Rod. Just before we get into some of the specifics, what would you say about people that have a certain idea? What would you like to change or say?
What was that?
What would you like to change about people might having stereotypes, just from your experiences?
I think just to remind them that, first of all, they are human beings, and once you get to know some of them and hear some of their stories and everything, you think, what might have happened to me if I'd have been in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them don't have like a family to fall back on. And a lot of them, they just they lose trust and kind of lose hope that they can ever have a meaningful life again. And, sometimes, and that just takes time and, getting to know them at first and gathering some trust up. And then you can make, suggestions to, hey, you could do this, And, through the day program, what we're trying to do is kind of lead them along, be a shoulder to lean on and direct them to the right agencies where they can get the help they need.
We're going to talk about the day services as sort of an addition that I think is a good one. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is you're all saying that the homeless population is more diverse and homeless at that moment in time for a variety of reasons. Now, we have about 1,500 homeless people a day. That's, they count them once a year for federal funding purposes, and they come up 12, 14, somewhere in that. We think of them as off in a corner somewhere or whatever, but right now they're at 3 shelters in the metro area, basically. Siena House, Open Door Mission, and the Stevens Center in South Omaha. And the shelters have traditionally been a place to stay at night, right?
Yes.
And so we are finding a need to augment that. If you could explain where we are in sort of the evolution of our homeless services.
Well, it was recognized a number of years ago that we can do better than just providing a roof over somebody's head and feed them and you know, keep them in the survival mode. And that if we took people by the hand and really worked diligently to help them through the issues that they have, whether it be a drug addiction or alcoholism or mental illness or whatever reason they're homeless, we felt that a lot of these people could be helped and helped for the long term. And so the dynamics is that these programs are becoming more service oriented with linkage to a variety of programs within the metropolitan community area, which hopefully, and the strategy is that these other programs can help people straighten their lives around, and then in the long term they become successful residents in our community, free of the drugs and alcohol, taking the medications or whatever mental illness strategy there is to help them in that regards.
Self-sufficiency
Yeah,
and
that-
pride. I think that would be a rather important factor.
You know, this isn't going to work for everybody, but you know, maybe it's only the top 25% that we can help on an annual basis to get them into housing and employment. You know, that would be a huge impact on this community.
Deborah, you deal with the families. You at Lydia House, you have family housing shelters. And you were mentioning to me before the show, and yes, it makes perfect sense, I didn't think about it, that a lot of our women are coming out of or trying to move out of abusive situations. And so when you have poverty anyway, and then you can leave an abusive situation, I suppose men can be abused too, that's a real difficult thing. You leave everything behind, even if you had a little to begin with.
You leave everything behind. We see women, children, even families who are coming with just the clothes on their back. They may have a few belongings in their car if they have a car. And so we're able to provide them with not only food, shelter, clothing, the basic needs, but also the one-on-one case management. It's strength-based so that we can work alongside of them, help them be reinstituted into independence through employment, housing opportunities. And so we stand by them and walk alongside of them and work with them to reactivate their independence.
And probably reactivate their spirit a little. I
Yes.
think that you know, whether it's mental illness or drug or alcohol dependency or both, which is often the case. In fact, we have a recent situation where we're closing down our regional health centers, where a lot, which didn't have the majority of mentally ill people in the state, but housed some of them more seriously. Is that impacting at all? Since they would tend to go probably to a more populated area like Omaha, is that impacting the shelter situation at all?
You know, we've seen a huge impact. Not that there wasn't an impact before they closed, because we continually have received persons from the state mental institutions.
Like when they're released, or they think they're well enough they're not a danger to
Right.
themselves or others?
Yes. And we've had numerous instances where we just picked people off the street that had been released from the institutions that didn't have housing. And so we see a lot more of the really severe mentally ill being housed in our shelter. And I would assume much the same with the Open Door Mission.
Yes.
That's a tough nut to crack, because you talk about services, and we'll get more into the day services, but you talk about trying to job counseling, maybe even GED, getting them towards the GED if they don't have it, maybe some job training or tips on how to present yourself, or any of these things. They're difficult enough when you're down and out and you're pretty much, kind of have it together. But when you have one or two of those two diagnoses, you've got your hands full, and so do they.
What we have found with the severely mentally ill is that about all we can do is house and feed and clothe them.
And help them take get their medications.
Right. We don't have the professional staff to really operate a mental institution, and that's not what we're all about. But we work with our staff to ensure that these people are safe and secure and that they're well taken care of.
And go ahead.
We've developed partnerships with VNA, Charles Drew Clinic. We have nursing students from UNO, from Clarkson, many of them taking their psych rotations at Open Door Mission, and so they're able to come in and sit down with those that we serve and do a one-on-one with them and make not a diagnosis but a recommendation and point them in a direction where they can be better served.
If they can
Yes.
handle taking steps on their own.
Well, you mentioned that the population of dual diagnosis, and I think you know, I can't give you an exact number, but from my dealings, that's a pretty big number of the homeless population. I'd say 60 to 70%.
Some sort of
maybe.
substance abuse and the mental health.
Along with the mental illness, yeah. And so, you know, the best way to get to those people is to kind of, you know, like I said, establish some kind of trust with them. And after you do that, maybe, you know, you could start talking about, you know, maybe you could, you know, change your life. You don't want to push that on them right away because
No.
they'll kind of, you know, reject that. And like,
Well, you talked about the trust earlier. First, you have to reestablish.
Yeah,
Or
I think
establish
that's the
some
best because they've had things happen, or because of their mental illness, it's hard for them to trust. And I think at the Santa Francis House, we work pretty closely with Community Alliance, and I think you guys
Yes,
do
we
too.
do.
A really good organization for mental health. And you know, if the thing with before I became the manager of the day program, I worked at the Santa Francis House for 5 years as an addictions counselor, and it's important that you treat both things, the mental illness and the addiction.
Well, plus you have a
okay?
chicken and egg situation. Sometimes the mental illness came first, and they numb themselves from the illness with alcohol. Sometimes, especially with meth, which is such a vile drug in terms of what it does to your brain, then mental illness can be the result of you know, some drug use, and so it's hard to unlock the two of those when they're together, as I understand it.
Exactly.
And if you're homeless, you don't have a support system. You know, your family, friends, to hang out, you know, hang with you.
Right, and you're exactly right. It's hard to tell which come first, but really to treat it, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? But you have to treat both things. A lot of times, if the mental illness is severe, you need to treat it, you know, first to get things going. But and what we try to do is get it, you know, started with mental health, and then you know, try to convince them to get into a program, whether it be our treatment program at the Santa Francis House, and we've always got a huge waiting list, which most treatment facilities do. So usually we end up placing them with us, and something that we can do now that we have a day program and a day program staff, we actually have a counselor that is on the day program staff. So at least until a bed opens up in the recovery program, they can start seeing a counselor and start working on things, because it's hard to stay sober when you're not in a program.
Absolutely, and you said the waiting lists have always been long in these programs, and they're getting longer, not
They're
shorter.
getting longer.
So
Yet these programs are so necessary. 60% of those that we serve have less than a 6th grade education. Lack of education is a big attribute to homelessness. And so we want to provide the opportunity, we want to have the resources available once they decide to enter into a program, a recovery program, available with GED, with ESL, work skills, life skills, everything that can re-engage the disengaged.
I think that's a good word, disengage. They are really not, I mean, it's not a matter of just shelter or illness or, but they're not engaged at all, and for a number of reasons. And I think that's the thing that people wonder about. In fact, there was a lot of discussion, has been and will continue to be in Omaha, about the the number of homeless during the day. We're down at the Jean Leahy Mall and down at the library, and here we're putting a new performing arts center, and what are we going to do with the homeless? In a way, I guess some people say we wanted to hide them, but in a way we wanted to provide something more. How is that going? The mayor worked hard to try to get some seed money to have day programs. You're expanding. Are you doing some new things too?
Yes, we are. We have put in a few 1,000 feet of square footage recently, about a year and a half ago, and we're able to facilitate about 60 men. We average about 60 men in that little room with that program throughout each month. And we also have a day facility program for women, and about 17 women participate in that, and there's about 7 children that are included in that also. And through this program, they're able to, once again, have access to GED and ESL, case management, the partnerships that we have with the medical field throughout the city.
So, but there's still some issues if transportation needs to be available to get them, if they get to the point where you've maybe got their GED and then they can start applying for a little more sophisticated jobs or whatever. I mean, this is a complex thing. You need services to send them to services.
Right.
But is it better having them on a little bit closer to base during the day, that they can, in case something comes up or services are available, or is it? Would you rather have them out in the community during the day? What's the right answer, the right solution?
Well, we want to encourage them to obtain employment, of course.
Right, absolutely.
But we also want to be available to meet their needs. If they need us, we want to be there for them. Our laundry room's open, our kitchen's open, and they can have the medical attention if they need it throughout the day.
What about you, Rod? Rod, what are some of the things that you're doing? Do you think that what you're doing now is adding to their hopefulness, or in a better way than just kind of okay, everybody to the mall and go out and look for jobs downtown kind of approach?
I hope so. I mean, we've only had a day program at the Santa Francis House for what, Mike?
Well, since December.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting it going. We've hired new staff, and the word's getting out there now. Where we're able to, I think, reach a lot more people.
So what goes on in a typical day? Now that they're
Well,
in the
now
day
that
program?
we're like a day facility, a lot hasn't changed, and maybe Mike can speak more on. We have a new building being built right now.
That's right.
I mean, we're packed to the gills. You know what I mean? And so right now, there's not a lot we can do except let them stay in, and they know that we have a day program now, and we have staff that can, start helping them, and like she was saying,
At least
case
there's somebody
management.
there to ask. There's a resource there to at least ask.
Right.
Well, what we've been doing is using food kind of as the carrot to get people to stick around. And so we're providing breakfast, lunch, and of course dinner. And inviting and allowing people to stay in the facility, at which time then we've got 4 staff now that work under this day program that are doing the one-on-one work, whether it be providing transportation or counseling, or getting people to, say, a Social Security office to go through a process for disability payments, or getting people to general assistance to apply for other types of assistance.
So is there a little
or
more
veterans.
one-on-one time
Oh,
this
a
way?
whole lot more one-on-one time. That's really what's boiling down to. But all of a sudden we've got hundreds of people that are clamoring for assistance, and we've got 4 staff rather, to help them. So it's a huge caseload. So their job right now is to start concentrating on those people who are in earnest in wanting to turn their lives around and get this assistance.
So we're improving. The good news is that in the last year and a half or so at both your places, you're improving the services because you've got them there and you can help them with what they need, or at least lead them in the right direction. The bad news is everybody would like that help during the day, and you don't have quite the funds and things to do it. And I imagine they would go down to the library downtown to use the internet, to learn.
Sure.
They need to use phones to make job inquiries. I mean, you really need to do it right. You need a few more resources than just square footage.
Right, and I mean, we don't have the space right now, so we're just using existing space. We've done some remodeling to try to accommodate the new staff, but the long term is that we will build a facility, a day facility of approximately 12,000 square foot. We're going to make it attractive. We're going to create a mall effect, like a mini Gene Leahy Mall, where people can hang out and where they can use this facility to have library services or restroom facilities, laundry facilities,
Showers.
counseling, showers. You know, this. If you think about whatever you need and require during the day, all these people do too. There's
And then as you
1,500
get
of them.
more secure, you can kind of go out in the world. In other words, if you have this, I guess I would call it a family of services, and that in family is what you need to reestablish. And then as when we grow up in our homes, we're close with our family, we're secure, and then we move out.
If you have the time and the staff to develop a rapport with them, like I said before, you know, trust, it really is, it's a big thing, to get their confidence level back up. Yeah, when I worked, you know, I worked at the Santa Francis House as a counselor for our recovery program. A lot of times there would be individuals around there in the shelter that I would see from time to time, and you know, for years now, right? And I always wished that I had the time to spend more time with them, but because we had so many people in our treatment you know what I mean? And you got to know where your boundaries are, or
Where you can
you'll
spend your
burn
time the
out.
best, too.
Right. And so now that we have the day program and the day program staff, we can do that. We can go up and spend time with them, just kind of, you know, getting to know them, and then hopefully convince them, you know, help them get their esteem up just a little, you know, enough to get going, because, you know, once you've lost hope, you know, so if we can just get, you know, the hope lit, so to speak, again.
Then little by little, poco
then
a
the rest
poco,
will,
yeah.
the rest will come. And a lot of these people need guidance in the beginning. They need guidance on, you know, how to go get on the bus. They need guidance with,
That sounds
you know, with,
bizarre to most people, but
right.
people oftentimes, I mean, I just think about the times in my life where things have been a little rough. I sort of regress a little, because stress and life problems can do that. And if it happens big time, I've never had anything really horrible happen. I imagine every resource you have in terms of energy is to keep you alive. Everything else just kind of goes to heck.
Yes.
You know, this is all going to take money.
Takes a lot of money.
Where's this money coming from?
Well, in the case of the Santa Francis House, 75% of our resources comes from the community, the households, small businesses, and churches that donate funds to us. 9% comes from what we call government grants, and then the remainder comes from local foundations that provide grant funds to keep us going.
So, and you,
Open Door Mission has had a couple large backers keeping their day facility initiative program going, and Peter Kiewit's been great for that. Also the Omaha Community Foundation, but we've also had quite a few private donors who have seen the need, seen us on the news, and have responded.
now the mayor, Mayor Fahey, about 2 years ago started to have some of his team help you come up with a plan to kind of move the folks from the streets and the mall and the libraries. Again, not just to shove them aside, but with the hope of serving them better. And there was some money put out to get this initiative really going, and a promise of more. The mayor said he would do some fundraising. Are we still in the process of looking for more?
I need to answer that because I initially had met with Mayor Fahey 3 times before that announcement to try to get this initiative off and running. And what the mayor agreed to do was to commit $1 million in community development block grant funds towards this effort. And
Is that the funds that might disappear in Washington, or are
well,
they still back in the
yeah,
picture
I think those
now?
funds are okay right now. And the concept evolved into creation of 3-day facilities in certain neighborhoods. South Omaha would be covered by the Stevens Center, East Omaha, the Open Door Mission, and then the near north side would be the Sienna Francis House. We wanted to jumpstart the programs. We knew that the bricks and mortar would take a while to get that money. And so, thus, the Kiewit Foundation and the Omaha Community Foundation put money towards this effort so that the 3 agencies could hire staff and get the program started. Right now, fundraising for the bricks and mortar, which would be our new facility, and then the expansions at the Open Door and the Stevens Center, the money's not there yet. There's still a long-term commitment for community development grant, block grant funds, but the most recent development is it would be over a 3-year period. And so the disappointment is that we want to get moving quickly so that we have space to provide these programs. Right now, we've got 4 people in one office at our facility, and so it really puts a strain on us. Now, I know and I trust that this funding will come through.
Well, I hope it does, because I think, especially where you folks are located, you're located and where a lot of development is going on, where the city is blossoming. It would be great to see blossoming for this effort. We just have about a minute left, and I guess you would like people to certainly donate if they find in their hearts.
Can I just throw one thing in quick, that it does work? Right now, I think that we have, either 6 or 7 people that were homeless that came into our recovery program that are going to college now, like at Metro.
And I know you have
or,
stories like that, too.
Yes,
so
we
it
do.
does work.
We have found over and over that hunger is the reason people come to Open Door Mission, and hope is the reason they stay.
And so that second element is pretty key. And then throw in that trust thing, too.
Exactly.
So, well, I want to thank you for being with us. Again, the Sienna Francis House is in north of the downtown area. You're out by Epley Airfield.
Yes.
You can go to the websites, which you've seen throughout the show, and get more information. I do thank you for being with us. And I'm going to give you one last thing to push for the...
Well, I do feel that it's important for the community to continue to support not just Sienna Francis House, but the Open Door Mission and all the programs out there. The money is hard to come by.
Okay.
It is tough.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike Sacklar, Deborah Hayes, and Rod Bauer. And thank you for joining us this week on Consider This.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.